Okay. Right here.
Thank you all. So why don't we take a quick minute to take some deep breaths. So whatever you're doing, right, place your feet on the ground, feel the ground, and take a couple of deep breaths. Focus on your breath. Let your breath help center you, right? Deep breath in and deep breath out. Deep breath in. Deep breath out. So as you focus on your breath, I'm going to just do a quick poem by Michelle Armster on land and enslavement acknowledgement. And he writes, right, a vision for justice. A long, long time ago, Michelle Armster says, or was it last year? Or was it just yesterday? So as you breathe in and breathe out, she says a seed was planted. Yes, a justice tree seed was planted. But how will it grow? How will this justice tree grow when the ground is poisoned with lies and broken entreaties? So as you breathe in and breathe out, Michelle Armster asks, how will it grow when water spills the blood of African and indigenous bodies? As you breathe in and breathe out, Michelle Armster further asks, how will it grow when the stories of the settlers is the sun that scorches the earth, burns the backs, and drinks our tears? So as you breathe in and breathe out, Michelle Armster says, and we know that our stories are not the same. And we know that justice, yes, justice is a verb, not just a verbiage. And we know that our work is all about the babies as you breathe in and breathe out. Taking care of the babies until the 7 generations, the babies we must love in ourselves, in our homes, in our communities, and above all, in our streets. She invites us to bear witness, create a safe and a brave space, learn from the past to see the future. They say Sankofa. We tell our stories, share our narratives, and then, maybe then, these moments that we are together becomes a movement. So as you breathe in and breathe out and move out of your head space, come into your heart space, right? Gently open your eyes and look around. Look around this amazing community, right? We're here to share stories. We are here to listen. We are here to learn, right? Let us create a space where every voice can be heard and lifted up, right? We want to invite you to be present, right? And anytime you feel dysregulated or any way emotionally triggered, please join us outside. We have space for you to sit down, breathe, and talk, right? We will create that space for you. So appreciate it. Give it up for yourself today, right? Come on, y'all, give it up. I'm going to take, I have the privilege of introducing our president and the CEO, Marquita Stevens from the Urban League. So y'all give it up, loud applause.
One of the organizers and kids one of the organizers and the host of the event is not putting it in honor of welcoming everyone. Not only our dignitaries, but our everyday folk. But for us, So we welcome the Anti-Racism Coalition, the UN reps, and the members group. We gathered here to support community members who have experienced police violence and efforts to increase awareness and provide authentic testimony of its impact. When we, as early in conjunction with the NAACP and some other partner, were involved in 21st century policing a few years ago. And we've been involved in it ever since. We've hosted meetings with the Black community in particular to fashion its response to some of the consent decree initiatives and points that will be coming forward shortly from the Department of Justice. And I'm really feeling like I'm feeling the weight of the moment. I'm feeling, and you'll have to forgive me because I'm a woman of faith, that this is holy. I'm feeling like what we are about to experience here is a once in a lifetime thing. It's not that it's never been said before, but it's going to land and be felt in a much different way. And so I welcome you to this space. I want you to live in the moment, feel what you feel, do what you do when you feel what you feel, because you're home. This is your urban.
Thank you, Carrie. One more time, y'all. Give it up.
I've got to fly out here for a national meeting, but I'm going to take all of this with me. This is the last that we talked about. At the conclusion, one of our board members of the urban league will be here to close it out. So thank you, and we're done.
So next, I want to invite Carrie McLean to the stage because she is the one who is behind, the brains behind this whole process. So y'all give it up for Carrie McLean, right? Carrie, and Carrie walks to the podium. Carrie is a human rights lawyer and a social justice activist in over 17 years, and she's lived all around the world, right? And she is continues to be passionate about this process. So one more time, let's give it up and welcome Carrie to Minnesota.
It's so good to see you. Is this working? A little bit. A little more. Is this good? Oh, there. All right. Okay. Just want to put the light for this off. No, it's not.
There you go.
So I'm a human rights lawyer hired by the UN Anti-Racism Coalition, or UNR, to coordinate civil society engagement with EMLER. 5 of the cities that EMLER will go to during its visit to the United States. UNR was a key player in strategizing behind the scenes for the passage of the Human Rights Council resolution referred to as the George Floyd resolution, which was a resolution that created EMLER. UNR now collaborates with the EMLER Secretariat to ensure that EMLER is effective and that its approach centers impacted communities. Salima Hankins, the director of UNR, is here in attendance. Anyone? I'm going to share a bit more of the background. The brutal murder of George Floyd on May 25, 2020 was witnessed by the world on video. Mr. Floyd's death reignited public discourse on systemic racism and sparked one of the largest sustained mobilizations against racist police violence in history. In June 2020, an international coalition of hundreds of organizations and individuals sent a communication to the UN Human Rights Council urging that the UN convene a commission of inquiry to investigate racism and racist police violence in the United States. In an unprecedented move, the UN Advocacy Group followed up on that request and asked for an urgent debate on racism at the UN Human Rights Council, and also calling for a commission of inquiry to investigate racism. We learned from our contacts at the UN that the US pressured some countries to oppose a commission of inquiry. The Human Rights Council declined the request to convene a commission of inquiry, though it did task the UN High Commissioner of Human Rights with preparing a report on racism. The High Commissioner's report was delivered a year later and contained a recommendation for the establishment of a new mechanism which would examine systemic racism against people of African descent within the context of law enforcement. That recommendation led to the creation of the International Independent Expert Mechanism to Advance Racial Justice and Equality in the context of law enforcement, and the acronym is EMLER. EMLER, according to the UN's description, was established to further transformative change for racial justice and equality in the context of law enforcement globally, especially where relating to the legacies of colonialism and the transatlantic slave trade in enslaved Africans. EMLER will investigate governments' responses to peaceful anti-racism protests and all violations of international human rights law and contribute to accountability and redress for victims. EMLER has a 3-year mandate and is already in its 2nd year. Fulfilling its mandate involves, amongst other things, making visits to countries to examine systemic racism faced by Africans and people of African descent, examining the root causes of systemic racism against people of African descent in law enforcement and the criminal legal system, and how domestic law, policies, and practices may lead to disproportionate and widespread interaction between law enforcement officers and people of African descent. I'll pause on my description of EMLER to say a word about the history of law enforcement in the United States. Law enforcement in the US routinely subjects people of African descent to policing to control our movements and actions and metes out harsh punishment for any perceived infraction. Law enforcement targeting of people of African descent for control and violence is not something that began in the US 40 or 50 years ago. It began centuries ago with the establishment of slave patrols, where whites were tasked with catching enslaved people who had escaped to freedom. Slave patrols also kept watchful eyes on enslaved people that they believed might be planning to escape, and the slave patrols exerted extreme violence over enslaved people that were deemed defiant. Slave patrols continued until the end of the Civil War. Following the Civil War, during the period of Reconstruction, slave patrols were replaced by militia-style groups who were empowered to control and deny access to equal rights for formerly enslaved people. Those groups systematically enforced black codes, which were strict laws and strict local and state laws that regulated and restricted access to labor, wages, voting rights, and general freedom for formerly enslaved people. After the black codes were abolished, the Jim Crow laws quickly replaced them. The Jim Crow laws legalized segregation and inequality. The police department, established in the early 20th century, enforced the Jim Crow laws and exerted excessive brutality on Blacks perceived as violating the Jim Crow laws. It's important to acknowledge the historical context in any attempt to understand the current situation, which is why it's significant that EMLER's mandate acknowledges the relevance of the legacy of the transatlantic slave trade and enslavement of Africans. EMLER's mandate is global, which means that it will examine and visit other countries to learn more about similar issues concerning Africans and people of African descent in those countries. EMLER is composed of 3 expert members. The chairperson is former South African Constitutional Court Justice Yvonne Okoro, whom I regret to inform you was involved in a car accident 2 weeks ago and therefore is not able to participate in this visit. We're thankful that her condition is reportedly stable. The other 2 members of EMLER are Juan Mendez from Argentina, who's a professor of human rights law and a former UN Special Rapporteur on torture, and Dr. Tracy Kissy from the USA, who spent 25 years in the Denver PD, and after retiring served as the NYPD Deputy Commissioner on Training, then Deputy Commissioner on Equity and Inclusion. Dr. Kissy is now co-founder of a research center called the Center for Police and Equity, which promotes police accountability and transparency. Expert members.
I think this works. It does. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. One more time. Good morning.
Good morning.
First, my apologies for us being late to get to you and not meaning any disrespect getting here. So I want to repeat what Carrie said in regards to your stories. And of course, they are your stories and your lived experiences, but we all both recognize that this is re-traumatizing, it can be re-traumatizing, and we are not asking this in that sense. It is extremely important to this mechanism that we have for the record, and for our report, your story. I also want to lift and recognize that there are millions that don't make headlines, and millions that have gone before all of us here, that are not in this room. And so wanting to lift that and be respectful to those voices who are no longer with us. And so I'm asking for those of you who will be seated at this table that if you do not feel that you can tell that story, then please don't. We will get the testimony in writing. It will be delivered to us in writing, and that is okay. It is okay not to sit at the table. And please recognize that. So we're not asking anyone who is not able not to do that. As stated before, prior to our arrival, we were in Chicago. Previous to that, we were in Atlanta and in LA as well. Leaving here, we will head to New York City. So thank you for being here, and we are with you. Take your time. Take your time. It is your story. I only wish that we had enough time because there's never enough time. So please take time.
Good morning, everybody, and just to what Dr. Kesey said, I'd like to thank UNARC and the Urban League for making this possible. It's very important for us to gather testimony from your lived experience, and we want also to assure you that we will use in our report, for our report, we will use testimony and any additional material that you want to share with us. If we don't have enough time to hear the whole story from everyone who wants to talk to us, please be assured that we will receive your material in any form in the following days, so that in the process of finishing our mission and writing our reports that will be discussed eventually at the Human Rights Council in Geneva and will be widely distributed. We hope to gather as much information and analysis from you as we can. Thank you very much.
Thank you both. A couple of things. I do want to note that the experts are only in Minneapolis for one day, and they have some appointments in the afternoon. So we're going to try to stick as close to the schedule as possible. The other thing, just big thanks certainly for giving us this space for play. It's so appreciated. And many thanks to Alice of Blackness, the family supporting family against violence, and to all the organizations that pitched in to make today happen. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to the first group of people who will be testifying. Formerly incarcerated youth who survived solitary confinement.
Before, no, hear me? Okay. Okay. All right. Before we get started, Dahlia, Robert Epstein Human Rights is going to give us some information about why the proposal was even brought to the UN, and then the Legal Rights Man will also give us some information on what's currently happened, and then we will also then testify.
Thank you, Mr. Gunn. Good morning. My name is Julia Alayobo, and I'm an attorney at Robert F. Kennedy Human Rights. Work that happens every single day in the state. It's happening in our jails and prisons. It's happening in our immigration detention centers. And in the state of Minnesota, it's happening in our juvenile detention facilities and in foster care centers. Solitary confinement is an internationally recognized form of torture. It happens every single day. Sometimes it lasts days, weeks, months, and even years. There's a human cost to this form of torture. More than a third of people held in solitary confinement become suicidal and or psychotic within 2 weeks. And people who have been locked in solitary confinement are 78% more likely to commit suicide within a year of being released from prison. Yet solitary confinement happens every single day. Some may use neutral or kid-friendly terms to describe what is happening.
terms like back-to-baby claims, terms like DRT, disciplinary wounds on, but that's just solitary by another name. When RFK Human Rights collaborated with Atlas of Blackness to write the submission to the UN, we did so because we wanted to name the practice for what it is, solitary confinement. And solitary confinement, when used for 15 days, more than 15 days, when used indefinitely, when it's used as punishment, is torture. Over the last decade, there's been a growing number of family members, survivors, and organizers who have tried to put a stop to who have mobilized to end and or limit solitary confinement. The Federal Bureau of Prisons has outright banned the practice for juveniles because they recognize how damaging it is. Over at least 16 states have banned or severely limited the use of solitary confinement when it comes to youth. Today, we are going to hear from an incredibly brave group of young people who have undergone solitary confinement here in the state of Minnesota. May their stories move your heart and also move you to action. Thank you so much.
All the speakers, make sure the mic is close to you, please. Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Malika Avon. I am the interim executive director of solitary confinement in Minnesota juvenile correctional facilities is rampant and out of control. Data obtained from Care 11 News shows that since our community has brought forward language at the legislature to address this issue since 2021, there have been more than 4,000 times that children in our state, as young as 10 years old, have been locked in a cell by themselves for up to 23 hours. This is not the equivalent of a timeout. This is not a parent sending a child to their room. This is torture. If any members of the public, any of us in this room were doing this to children in our homes, child protection would be at our doors, arresting us for abuse or removing those children. In past years, as we've worked on legislation to address this issue, there have been various amounts of support from bipartisan legislators. We are looking forward to the outcome of this legislative session. A bill, House File 1233, passed the House and both the Senate, which would end the practice of solitary confinement in juvenile correctional facilities in the state. Our House and Senate just began their conference negotiations yesterday, and we are hoping that this bill will pass. But still, that doesn't address the past trauma, which we'll hear about for young people who experienced that in their childhood. And there's no guarantee that it will pass. So we're urging the UN to take action on this. We're urging the legislature to take action. And we thank you for listening to the stories today of people who have been directly impacted by this issue.
All right, can y'all hear me now? No? Kind of? Right here? Yeah. You don't have lipstick on it? Oh, I gotta shake your hands. I don't think I can take it off. Okay. Hi, my name is Lieutenant Heidi. Woohoo! Yeah, give me that. I'm the founder and executive director of Atlas of Blackness, right? Which is a grassroots multimedia organization. There you go. Yeah. Okay. You hear me now? Okay, cool. I'm the founder and executive director of Atlas of Blackness, a grassroots multimedia organization that our mission is to work with Black youth in the Twin Cities under the age of 30 to teach them how to preserve the histories of our people for future generations. I was born in Liberia during my country's Second Civil War. At the time of my birth, my tribe was being targeted and ethnically cleansed. We were categorized as illegal. At the age of 4, my family was forced into hiding, and my mother would protect us by hiding us into small homes, laying herself next to objects that could block the home in case rebels came shooting, which would be the first target. When I came to America, I came here as a political refugee, fleeing a country I loved deeply, but did not know how to love me. Unfortunately, my journey did not get any easier when I arrived to America. Due to immigration issues, my mother and siblings were denied entry. So I came here with my stepfather. My stepfather, who had severe addiction issues due to the 2 civil wars he had endured as a child. fell back into it when he came to America. Realizing he no longer had family to help him, the war's trauma overwhelmed him, leading him to abusing not only himself, but the people around him, including me. I was put into foster care and forced into an emergency shelter in Minneapolis at the age of 8. My experience in the emergency shelter was traumatic. The executive director could not understand why I was extremely quiet. She would have her staff place me into a dark attic-like room until I learned to answer her questions. I only spent a week at that emergency shelter, but 4 out of those 7 days were spent in that dark space crying and praying to be released back into my stepfather's house. The second time I experienced a form of prison was when I was 8.5 years old. I was playing a traditional West African game called Lapa outside with my friends when a cop car came. They asked my apartment manager who Lucinda Caillou was, and she pointed to me. Still fish with fish. The 2 police officers approached me and said, "We must bring you to somewhere safe. Your stepfather has been arrested again." I was placed back in the back of the police car and placed at St. Joseph's Home for Children in Minneapolis, which is now shut down, thanks to the advocacy and organizing of Black movement for cities. I was forced to take off my clothes and show that I had no weapons on me at 8 years old. They placed me in a unit called King Hall. The overnight staff at King Hall became frustrated that I spent 2 weeks refusing to speak and locked me in an empty room. I was placed in solitary confinement because I refused to talk, but I was just an overwhelmed autistic child. It was a feeling I thought I had left behind in Liberia, but there I was again, alone, helpless in a cold room without any means to protect myself. The only difference was that I was not with my mother this time, who had always been my shield, who has always shielded me from harm. I had been forced into this situation and made to spend over 10 hours in that room until my favorite staff member, Kevin, came to rescue me. He was outraged that when he found me, that I had been placed in a room that was infested with mice. But the reality was, the system we have set up often fails to protect children in these facilities. My experience of being in prison continued for years, in and out of St. Joseph's Home for Children until I was 11 years old. And I was placed back with my stepfather. It became clear enough that addiction cannot be easily overcome. It is a disease that requires support and structure and financial resources to combat effectively. Without these things, my stepfather continued to abuse himself and those around him, including me. I was removed from his house again, but this time it was different. I was taken out of class by 2 police officers who did not tell me where I was going. They placed my backpack in their trunk and told me to sit in the back seat. It was scary. I felt shameful. It felt like I was being treated as a criminal. The only thing I had done wrong was being a Black child of an addict who was also Black. The police officer took me back to St. Joseph's Home for Children. The abuse from the staff and my peers was too much to bear. I finally started fighting back. Even the solitary rooms that once terrified me no longer had any power over me. I began to scream for hours, hoping that they would remove me from that space. I spent over 6 months at St. Joseph, which is very rare. And during this time, I started a hunger strike in hope that it would force them to notice the abuse I was enduring. However, 2 male staff members attempted to restrain me and force me to eat. They threatened me with violence and said that what they would do to me would be worse than what I experienced in Liberia, as if they would know. I refused to give in. They locked me into a room, back into that same room with the mice. After 2 days, I began to hallucinate. I believe I was spending time with my mother. It was the only safe space. It was my only safe space. And if I was going to lose my mind, at least I was with my protector next to me. My behavior became too much for St. Joseph to handle. St. Joseph Home for Children reached back out to my social worker and told her I was no longer able to stay here. As a result, they placed me in a treatment facility called Advocacy Center for Girls in Blaine, Minnesota, which is ran by Volunteers of America. That facility caters to 8 girls ages 13 to 18. I was only 11 years old. Considered unfosterable due to my queerness, my undocumented refugee status, and my continued flashback of abuse. My first experience with solitary confinement at Avanti was vastly different from St. Joseph. During the lockdown, I had a PTSD episode, panic about being in my small room for too long When I ran out of the room, breathing heavily, the staff put me in a chokehold for refusing to stay in my room, causing me to panic even further. The four staff members on duty then dragged me into their restraint room, where one of them slammed me to the ground and sat on my back, while the other two sat on my feet. The fourth would monitor how long I had been in the restraint to keep track for DHS. Despite my screams that I couldn't breathe, the staff disregarded me and attributed it to my asthma. I'm not crying, allergy. Claiming that they were teaching me how to behave within this facility. Eventually, I freed myself and ran to the corner, leaving severe rock burn on the right side of my face, and they used that as my case file picture. One notable difference between Avanti and St. Joseph's was how they referred to solitary confinement. While St. Joseph used term directly like solitary confinement, Avanti referred it back to basics to make it seem less severe. However, Avanti's approach to solitary confinement was more confusing for young individuals like myself, because it wasn't a straightforward being locked in a dark room. Instead, they will remove your bed, restrict your food and drink to peanut butter jelly sandwiches and milk for all 3 meals. This left me questioning my behavior and sanity, as I was made to rationalize the abuse that was happening to me in my bedroom as if it was just a timeout. Minnesota has a way of beautifying words. Instead of solitary confinement, we call it back to basics, disciplinary room times, and register seclusion rules, which is used in setting forth schools. These are just more digestible ways of saying solitary confinement. And then solitary confinement is a digestible way to allow you to torture children. As an adult now, I experience back pain, fear of confined spaces, chronic illnesses, and I have developed lupus. Because of the trauma I experienced at Avanti and the St. Joseph's Home for Children. As a child, I was born into a country that deemed my tribe as illegal. As a Black person, when I came here, I was then categorized as an illegal entity. People tend to rationalize the abuse incarcerated individuals experience, especially Black children. We do this because we want to uphold this idea of law and order. And even when an individual hasn't committed a crime, we still rationalize the abuse. We view individuals not as human beings, but as a threat to the state. I want to emphasize today, we're here listening to testimonies of survivors of tortures. Survivors like myself have forced our bodies today to dig into our memory boxes and pull out trauma that we've tried years to forget. We do this for our siblings who are suffering and undergoing the same torture we survived. Today, EMLER experts and the media who's in this room right now have the opportunity to call out for the banning of solitary confinement, including the rooms we call back to basics, disciplinary room types, and registered seclusion rooms. Before making any decisions or recommendations, I urge you to listen to our stories and remember, we need people to speak out for us, right? On a global and a national level, we must understand that people who are viewed as illegal are not listened to. Our existence is considered illegal because of our Blackness. Our government officials are unwilling to listen to us. It's up to the experts and the media in this room, because y'all, especially the media, y'all tend to not always listen to people who are marginalized. To correctly tell our stories and those of our siblings who are currently incarcerated. We hope you will commit to correctly, authentically, and empathetically telling our stories, allowing your audience to understand what it's like to be Black in Minnesota and dealing with a system that views you as a threat. Thank you for coming here today, and I'll pass it on to the next speaker at the end.
Yep.
I want to take a moment and let us hold what we just heard. I realize how emotional this will make me. My name is Antonio Williams. I'm 37 years old. Served 14 years, 2 weeks in the Minnesota Department of Corrections as an adult. I currently run an organization called Tone Up. I help Black and brown people who have served time. Come back home, find your place, regain some of that dignity that has been stripped from them. I was born in Chicago, Green housing projects. In the early 90s, my parents moved me and my siblings to Minnesota. Shortly after that transition, my parents lost their parental rights. Me and my siblings entered the foster care system. Before I was 13 years old, I had lived in one foster home after another. I passed through over 30 of those places before graduating middle school. St. Joe's was a place that, I spent years on and off. Bar none, ran by Volunteers of America. This'll do many other places. My first experience with solitary confinement was while I was in one of those juvenile centers. They had these rooms called level rooms. They put you on a level system. And if you violated your level, you were placed in a level room, which I now know to be solitary confinement for kids. At the age of 12 and 13, I was placed in solitary confinement for a few days. Almost 2 years later, at the age of 14, I ran away from the foster home. Less than a year later, I turned myself in. I called my social worker at the time. He said, call the police, tell them where you're at, they'll come get you, bring you where you need to go. They came, they put me in handcuffs, put me in the back of their car, and took me to the Juvenile Detention Center in Henry County. Spent the next 6 months in a kids' jail without having committed a crime. Most of that jail time was done in solitary confinement. See, back then in JDC, programming was limited. So they kept you in your cell. I heard yelling all the time. I mean, the yelling is over and over again. And I know now, any of that yelling was kids breaking. Kids were breaking. Because they yelled and they weren't able to be calmed down, they were also forcibly removed from their cells. And in the mornings, they would have their bedding taken from them. They would literally come in and take their beds, their sheets, and leave kids in their cells for hours every day as a punishment for yelling. I was always an outgoing kid, social, coachable, goofy. But what started to happen to me after all that isolation, discipline, later, I withdrew into myself. Stopped caring for myself, how I looked, how I smelled, all of it. Less than 6 years later, I ended up in an adult prison. During the 14 years I was incarcerated, I spent roughly 4 years in solitary confinement. See, solitary confinement as a child hyper amplified the self-consciousness every preteen has. Felt damaged, unloved, ugly. But the regular feelings of awkwardness and image consciousness morphed into an unhealthy feeling of being stupid. I felt stupid, felt unloved, and I felt irredeemable. I wasn't able to hold eye contact. I started to talk very softly, and I lashed out. Didn't talk. I internalized the lack of love I was being shown. I started to hate myself, and I lost hope and belief that there was anything good in me or for me. And much of that stayed with me as I got older. The solitary confinement I experienced as an adult was a lot harsher. I served 720 consecutive days in the maximum security prison solitary confinement. They call it the ACU, Administrative Control Unit in Oak Park Heights here in Minnesota. But The solitary confinement that I experienced in Rust City Prison here in Minnesota stands out the most. They only allow prisoners to flush the toilets every 30 minutes. So you gotta time your bowel movements. Otherwise, you gotta sit in there with your own filth and stink. We can only run our cold water once every 10 minutes. You know what the reason is behind that. And they leave the bright fluorescent lights on in the cells from 6:30 in the morning to 10:30 at night. And we are not allowed to have bars of soap or a washcloth to wash them. Years of sensory deprivation and overstimulation took a toll on my ability to be affectionate, to be shown affection. I've developed horrible anxiety, migraines, and depression. Being in this room, no one would know it, but I'm nervous, I'm scared, I'm anxious, I'm all of that. And this isn't my first time being in a room with all of these people. I do it all the time. But I have to consciously tell myself I'm okay. I consciously remind myself that I'm supposed to be in this room, telling my truth, my story, because there's so many other people who went through the same thing. And if I don't speak about it, no one will ever come to rescue them and help them and save them. The scary part about all of it is I don't know yet how far, how deep the damage of solitary confinement and the experience of incarceration runs. I don't know all of it. Certain things that I do, certain things that I say, certain things, the way I move. Some of it is rooted in, me being me, but I think a lot of it is rooted in trauma that I haven't yet identified. We're social beings. All the science shows that we are happier, healthier, and we live longer when we are social, have friends and natural human contact and interactions. Putting someone in solitary confinement is inhumane. Putting children in solitary confinement is sick and barbaric. And we do it every day here in Minnesota and across the nation. Policymakers in Minnesota and the rest of the US must outlaw solitary confinement across the board, not just for children, but across the board. We're literally torturing kids. We cannot call ourselves a civilized society if our responses to our children's pain, our children's trauma, children's immaturity, and lack of resources is uncivilized and inhumane. That is cell next to brother, neighbor. He talked about what he wanted to do when he got home. I knew he didn't have an out day. He always talked about what he was going to do when he got home. He would stop the COs in their rounds, tell them things that he needed, and they would ignore him. He killed himself. A few weeks before I was finishing up my sentence, solitary confinement. This is what we're doing in the so-called best nation on earth. This is how we're doing our people. We gotta stop it. The only way it stops is if we all speak out. And we need outside help. So I urge the UN to please put pressure, put the full might that you can on this country to outlaw, to ban this practice of solitary confinement. I'll pass it to the next speaker. Thank you.
So please, please take care of yourself and take care. Right, there's water, there's bathrooms out here. You want to make sure that everybody's. No, we don't. We're still on the break. It's in the break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm Maya Burrell, formerly incarcerated. I spent more than 18 years of my life in the Minnesota Department of Correction for a crime that I didn't commit. But a lot of that time in the beginning of my incarceration was spent in solitary confinement. I started to write on my experience, and every time I would start, like I would have to go back, and I would have to go back further because I wanted to actually identify where the trauma started at. And my experience is a little bit different than what you heard about the other panelists as far as solitary confinement as a child. With me as a child, I grew up here right in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I grew up with my family. My father went to prison when I was 6 years old. So I spent the majority of my life with my mother and my siblings. We went through a lot of different trials and tribulations in my youth, as far as just the things that come with being from a specific geographical location, coming from an urban area, you know what I mean? My mother, she went through abusive relationships, so we're in and out of battered women's shelters as children, stayed with other relatives. But the one thing that we always had was each other. And that was always my healing space. And so when Tony was talking about how he helped his brother integrate back into society after being conditioned to going through the different situations that come along with being incarcerated, I thought about how that healing process takes place and how he spoke about how he can't even really identify with all of the trauma that he experienced through his experience of being in prison. That was something that resonated with me as well. But the big thing was the healing that came from community. When I was 16 years old, I was charged with first-degree murder for a crime that I didn't commit. I was sent to Hennepin County Jail. So I didn't necessarily go through a juvenile facility. I have been incarcerated in juvenile for like truancy or curfew violation, but it was never for a lengthy amount of time, like only a couple of days at most. But when I was incarcerated at the age of 16, I was sent to the county jail where I was housed in solitary confinement. And that's where I sit for like the first 5 months of my incarceration. The unit that I was housed in was populated with a lot of people that had mental health issues. And there was a disciplinary segregation that was across from this segregation, but the people who were sent to this segregation were usually sent there by default because it was overflow for the people with mental health issues. Me as a juvenile, the justification for them sending me to solitary confinement was because I had a high profile case and they wanted to keep me safe. But they isolated me, and that was something I wasn't used to. And from the moment I stepped foot in the county jail, like I longed to be with my family. I longed to be with people, around people that were like me, people that I identify with, or people that could just show me that it's going to be all right. But instead, I was caged for 23 hours a day. And when I was allowed to have my hour out, I was allowed an hour out to walk around in the day room in circles and maybe have a phone call or a shower. my experience was like super traumatic because I had never been separated from family for a lengthy amount of time. And I would have to sit there and look at people getting on the phone and calling their families all day when they would come out for their hours, but I didn't have access to anyone. But the first thing that registered to me was that the hopelessness that place bred. Like Antonio was saying, as far as the yells and screams, when I first came into segregation, I just remember people just yelling and screaming and crying. And these were adults. And so me as a child, like it was like a super devastating experience because I never seen grown men be so hopeless and have nobody to come to their aid. I used to watch this correction officers walk by as people were banging their doors saying that they needed help. Some people were actually showing that they had razors or were going to attempt to cut themselves. And the COs would keep walking. You know, I seen people cut their wrists, you know, people spread feces on the windows of their cells, you know, people crying, grown men crying. And me as a child looking, all it did was register to me that there was nobody coming to help me. So I did develop an antisocial personality to where I, as a defense mechanism, because I was all that I had. The fluorescent lights, when I first had segregation, I was just thinking like, I just want to go to sleep. Dream, didn't understand my situation. And this is coming from a child, so even outside of the specifics of my situation, with you being incarcerated, you're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. But this is an innocent child who's sitting in solitary confinement in a cage 23 hours a day, being conditioned to become hopeless, knowing that nobody's going to come to your aid and assist. And I remember wanting to go to sleep. I couldn't sleep, so I would pace the floors back and forth for hours, to the point where the marks from my sandals, you could see the marks from my sandals in the middle of the floor of the cell that I was in. Pace the floor until I got dizzy, and I would lay down and try to sleep. I remember dozing off for just 10, 15 minutes and waking back up and being back in the same place. The lights would always be on. So I started wrapping the towels around my face in order to be in complete darkness and order to sleep. And this is something I still do to this day. This is more than 20 years after me being incarcerated. So I just remember, for me, first, the experience of solitary confinement as a child, knowing that not only was I separated from the rest of society, but I was separated from the rest of the children. This is something that a lot of people fail to understand. When you're charged as an adult or certified as an adult, you're still in an adult facility, so you're not able to interact with any other juveniles unless they're deemed to be certified adults. So if you have a community of people that you identify with outside, you don't have any interaction with these people anymore until they become adults. And by that time, more than likely, you've been conditioned to become a part of the system. It's a very dehumanizing process as far as the stripping down, you know, taking everything away from you and then telling you that there's nothing that you could do about it. The one thing that I heard from both of these panelists is that they were penalized for trying to hold on to their humanity. And that was the main thing, the process of trying to break a human being and to create a different entity, take away their humanity and force them to accept that as reality. But then when they're released to society, you expect for them to function as regular citizens. This is a very, very scary situation for me because you can never see what a person's been through. Like you can't look at a person and see that they've been through these traumatic experiences. But for a person who does identify with them, their heart should go out to their situation. And so I'm here speaking out for all of those who can't speak for themselves, because there are thousands and thousands of people who are being tortured right now as we speak through these practices that are they're actually functioning exactly the way that they were created to function. And I believe that they were created to break human beings. like I've lived in prison and seen people lose their sanity just beyond solitary confinement. Or you think about a child, for me, something practical. I think about if you go and take a child, your child, you go and take their shoes away, or you take away their clothing or something that they think that they care about, something that's important to them. The first thing they're gonna do is lash out. They might say something that's out loud, they might yell, but this is what a child does. When this happens behind those walls, these children are penalized severely to the point of torture. And a lot of that stuff is etched in their brain. You don't come back from it, especially when they accept it as normal. And I believe that that's the big thing with these practices, are to condition our children to accept them as normal for them. And when you accept it as normal for you, you accept you from you. You basically separate you from the rest of society. So you're the has-not. You're the one who deserves to be punished or deserves to be tortured, or you might be just the only one who actually understands it. Now you guys have an opportunity to understand the experiences that these children are going through. God, when it resonates, to touch your heart, and we can actually abolish these practices because of their like I said, they're breaking human beings. And there's no way for us to actually start, like Antonio was talking about, seeing your self-worth, or even understanding your humanity, your purpose, if you're conditioned to accepting these practices as reality. So I appreciate you guys listening to my testimony. God, I gave you a little bit of perspective on the practices that are taking place, and we can make some changes. I appreciate y'all having me.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brianna McCulton. I'm sorry if I'm too loud. But I hope everyone's doing okay and mentally staying with us to hear these stories, because they are truly heartbreaking. And honestly, we're just trying to do everything we can to make this change happen. Today, I'm going to share a little bit of my story with you all. From a very young age, I frequently interacted with police due to the trauma I had experienced. These experiences left me with a deep fear and distrust towards the police. Despite being a child who endured trauma, I always felt like a bad person around them. When I was 13 years old, I endured a traumatic experience and forced me to be removed from my home. I felt comfortable enough to confide in my school social worker about my situation. Still, I immediately regretted it when she informed me that she must involve the police and I could not go home. The police arrived shortly after, and I was forced to walk with them to their vehicle. Feeling scared and anxious the entire time, I wondered if I had done something wrong and if it was all my fault. During the 15-minute ride to the hospital, which felt like hours, I was worried that everyone at school saw me leave and thought I was going straight to jail. The police brought me and my sister to the hospital, where they interviewed me and did a rape kit. Unfortunately, the police made me feel like I was lying about my assault, and they even questioned me as if I was the one who had committed the assault after being interrogated for hours. The police took me to a foster home, where I felt worse than ever after the abuse I had suffered from my stepfather. After experiencing unsuccessful foster care placements, including being trapped in a basement with my foster parents, I was finally placed in the Arlington house. However, I soon realized I was being unfosterable and labeled a child who could not regulate her emotions. At Arlington House, we were not allowed to leave our room after 9 p.m. except to use the bathroom and ask for permission. I was told that if I couldn't control my emotions, I would be restrained and sent to the juvenile detention center. This made me feel like I had to keep my feelings bottled up, and I was constantly afraid of being punished for expressing how I felt. I realized I could not show my genuine emotions without being put in a jail cell. After several months at the Arlington House, I was eventually placed in foster home in Bloomington. Still, no one was willing to listen to my cries about the trauma I had endured in my previous foster homes and at the Arlington House. Despite being a child who entered foster care because of abuse, I was not offered therapy or any form of mental health support except medication. By the age 15, I was filled with rage, hate, envy, and sadness. I turned to physical violence to relieve my anxiety as I did not know how to regulate my emotions. I hated those other kids because they had what I didn't have, parents in a loving home. Towards the end of ninth grade school year, I had enough of being ignored. One day I had a particularly bad altercation at school and the police were called to handle me. I was handcuffed, detained, and shoved in the back of a cold police car. I was taken to a holding station in Bloomington where I was held in an adult jail cell for over 10 hours, shivering and asking for a blanket, which I was denied. I was released to my foster mother, later put on probation and sentenced to hours of community service. However, I was still not given any therapy or support, just higher doses of medication. I was eventually placed in a federal setting for a school called Alliance Education Center in Rosemont, Minnesota. One day at Alliance Education Center, I had a flashback and reacted to a situation. I feared that if I latched on and hit someone, I would be charged and put back into a jail without care. So I left the classroom and began hitting the wall in frustration. I was crying out for help, but nobody seemed to listen. The school resource officer, aka the school cop, told me to calm down or he would have to restrain me. I asked him to leave me alone and give me some space. He continued to follow me and eventually grabbed me from behind, forcing my hands to cross in front of me. He dragged me back to the classroom and put me in a room they called registered seclusion room. Being in that room felt like I was a patient in a horror movie. It made me feel claustrophobic, like I was stuck in an elevator with a bunch of people and couldn't breathe. This time I was in a room where I couldn't express my feelings until the staff decided I was ready to leave. After being treated like a wild animal instead of an abused, neglected, and forgotten child, I decided to commit suicide. To escape the pain the system had brought me, the anxiety lived in my bones, decaying in my brain every single day, keeping me trapped in my thoughts. I took so many pills because nobody seemed to hear my scream. They only saw the bad in me. Court dates, cold cop cars, and jail cells. I just wanted to be free. Luckily, my foster mom found me and called an ambulance to take me to the hospital. Finally, I was given a therapist. I shouldn't have had to attempt suicide to receive the help I needed. I just needed love, nurturing, and psychological care. As an adult, I still fear police in small places. Whenever I see a cop, I feel like I could be put back into a cell. My experience as a child in solitary confinement prepared me for life as an adult in the criminal justice system. I spent my entire life in and out of adult correctional facilities and probation. We shouldn't be programming children for prison. Children deserve to be given chances as their brains continue to develop. I never got to experience my childhood, teenage years, or early adult life. As a 24-year-old Black woman, my brain is still developing, and I'm finally getting to experience life in ways I never thought I would have. Today, EMLER policymakers in the media have the chance to stop the funneling of children into adult correctional facilities. We deserve a chance to live without emotional trauma. Instead of youth prisons and solitary confinement, we can invest into youth programming that helps children with mental health and provide families with housing assistance, financial stability, and culturally aware therapy for Black families. We are not criminals. We are literally just children that society has thrown away.
The next person we're gonna speak is actually wild. She's speaking for her brother who is currently incarcerated, who's been most of his life in juvenile detention centers and adult correction. She was gonna speak, but he just called. So he's calling from the jail cell right now. And so she's just gonna prepare him to speak. While she prepared him, I'm gonna have you go. You're the type person. You're the one
You all hear me? Yeah, so my name is Elijah Darris. I'm a former juvenile lifer here in Minnesota. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. The state of Minnesota actually came to St. Louis to arrest me and bring me back to face capital charges here in Minnesota. I was charged with first-degree homicide along with a number of adults. There was about 5 other adults that was arrested on the case. I was the only juvenile, I was the only minor. And so I was extradited to here, but as I was listening to all of the testimony, I sit here with clammy hands right now. Everything that was being said literally put me on a rocket ship ride right back to my time in solitary confinement inside of various different cells from Missouri here to Minnesota. And I had never been arrested before in my life. So I never even heard of solitary confinement. The very idea of being locked inside of something that's the size of you all's bathroom is foreign to me. I never even considered the notion. And just like Mayan, I was also immediately put into solitary confinement. I didn't even do nothing in population, but they put me immediately into solitary confinement as a juvenile. And then I was eventually, so I do have a different experience than you because I did get a chance to experience the juvenile justice system here in Minnesota. And so I was sent upon being extradited to what they call the Northwest Regional Correctional Facility, in which they have a juvenile inside of there. And I've never experienced nothing like that animal. I mean, the sheer starkness of it, how devoid it was of what we all would consider humanity. I mean, the colors was gray and blue, right? Everyone wore the same colored clothes, like prison looking attire. The way that I was spoken to, now I'm from St. Louis, and so St. Louis was considered one of the most racially segregated cities in the nation. The schools that I went to were either all white or all black. And so I really didn't have a lot of experience with white people anyway. And so this was my first experience. And the way that I was treated, I'd never been treated that way in my whole life. The way I was talked to, like a thing, right? Like a beast. I'd never experienced that. And so that's a difficult transition to go from being, a young person who's free, bantering about, to now being detained, facing capital charges, and facing the prospect of spending the rest of my natural life in the care of the Commission of Corrections. Inside of that juvenile, they have something that they call a quiet cell. The quiet cell is actually in a different part of the prison, call it a juvenile, but the prison, in which is an isolation cell. They do take the mattress, they take the pillows, they take everything, you have to ask to get toilet tissue. Everything is taken out of the cell. I've never experienced nothing like this. You all couldn't even imagine it, right? And so I do remember just screaming out sometimes, because that's how you sometimes get attention, right? They're not going to come unless you're screaming out, right? You banging on the wall, you'll be banging for half an hour before someone comes. And there was one time in which I did experience humanity, and it shocked me. I was banging and banging and banging, and then all of a sudden, the window, the two-way window pulled back, and one of the guards, it was a woman, she said, "What's wrong?" And I remember just staring at her, right? Because I couldn't even answer the question. So I said, "I don't know." And she said, quietly and softly, which I was unaccustomed to at this point, "I'm the only one that can hear you." So I was like, but I'm upset. And she said, well, let's talk about it. And we talked. Now, all of my family is in St. Louis. This was the first human type of interaction, because when you go to the court, they don't really talk to you. They talk to your attorney. When you come to the jail, they talk at you, right? They just try to get the basic information and then you're gone. All of us, I had a conversation. I kind of forgot how to talk to people. It was such a weird interaction. But I also felt back alive all of a sudden with just that conversation. And so as you all were talking, I kept going back on all of these rocket ship rides where being in solitary confinement extracts out your humanity. You do try to sleep the days away. What else are you supposed to do? They take everything out of the cells, right? I do remember actually being in the adult corrections facility because I was eventually convicted and given life in prison as a juvenile. I was 15 years old when I was first incarcerated. I actually refused to testify against all of the adults that was involved in the case. They probably didn't even want to give me a life sentence. But because I didn't testify and all of the other adults took deals, I received the automatic sentence for that charge, which was life. The judge actually told me, I sentence you to spend the rest of your natural life in the care of the Commissioner of Corrections. And he banged the gavel down. And I remember my legs kind of like giving out under me just a little bit. And I kind of faltered a bit and I kind of stumbled onto the lawyer who was next to me. And the only thing I really recall out of that moment, because everything else kind of went dark, was him kind of recoiling at the idea of like me touching him. Remember, it's devoid of real human contact, right? But I had made up my mind I wasn't finna serve no life sentence up here in no Minnesota. I wasn't finna do it. And so I had already stockpiled a gang of pills. I already knew what the score was if them people brought back a conviction against me. I wasn't finna spend all of these years facing what I was facing, because they took me from the juvenile to the county jail. The county jail, we talk about 23-1, that's 23 hours inside of the cell, 1 hour outside of the cell. They wasn't even doing that. They just had me in there. And every now and then, what I considered a cool CO would come through. He'll make everybody switch in for a bit. Switch in means they go into the cell and they lock it. That's called switch in. And then he'll pop it so that I can come out and quickly take a shower. And he made it seem like it was a conspiratorial thing between he and I. Don't tell nobody I'm letting you out to get this shower. The only other times that I got out was to go to court, right? Other than that, they had me just locked in all day, not 23-1 to 24 hours, right? And so, and that allowed me actually to stockpile the pills. And so when I actually was convicted, I popped every last single one of them. They were sleeping pills. And I didn't expect to wake back up. This is after the judge banged that gavel down. And I was actually shocked when I woke up, chained to a bed. Now, juveniles in adult correction facilities actually are 36 times more likely to commit suicide. 36 times more likely than the adults around them to commit suicide. Now, I can tell you why. Now, inside of the juveniles, Mayan can attest. Them adults aren't looking at us like, oh my God, I can't believe they got juveniles in there. This is terrible, right? They couldn't stand us. And you know, we couldn't stand them back in return. We had to band together to protect each other, because if they was coming at him, they was coming at me, because we was all we had. The guards didn't have our backs. The other inmates didn't have our backs. They couldn't stand us. And so we was constantly fighting with them, right? I was stabbed by one, right? And I spent about 3 years all together in solitary confinement from the 17 years that I ultimately did inside of prison. Now, those 3 years is broken up. At the minimum, you're going to get 15 days. That's the minimum. That's if you take the deal. If you take the deal, like let's say if you get into a fight, they'll give you 30 days. The deal is 15. So the minimum that I did was typically 15 days. The maximum that I did was 4 months, 120 days, right? Eventually, they made a determination to send me, still as a teenager, to Oak Park Heights, which is a super maximum prison, right? Now, I don't know how you get more maximum than maximum, but human beings have found a way to create what they consider to be a super maximum prison. And me and one of my close friends, Sammy, who was also a juvenile lifer, we both found ourselves in super maximum. Now, we are a band of brothers, those of us juveniles who were certified and sentenced to life in prison. We had each other's back, no matter if we was 14 or 15 or 16 in there, or 25 or 30. We are a band of brothers, right? And so when I saw Sammy, who was also, again, certified at 16 in Oak Park, they're super maximum. It's an underground prison, by the way, y'all. I mean, now, I thought that it was devoid when I was in a juvenile. It's sensory deprivation in Oak Park Heights. If you hear a loud sound, that's bad. I mean, something bad is happening because you don't really hear sounds. Like how you hear screaming in the other facilities, ain't no screaming, right? That would be considered disrespectful, right? And that would actually create an issue for you. And so me and Sammy walked this prison sentence together for many years, right? And Sammy was my homie. Loved him to death. Couldn't stand him when I first met him. Quickly, I'm gonna tell you the story of when I first met Sammy. So here I am now certified as an adult. They sent me to the adult prison and they allowed me to go down to the recreation. And I go down there, I'm stunned. I can't believe I'm now around all of these grown-ups. I got all kind of ideas in my mind about what it means to be in an adult correction facility. And hey, I wasn't gonna let none of that happen to me, not with these dudes and not with me, it wasn't happening. And so I just found myself just standing inside of the gym, just shook. And all of a sudden I saw two legs kind of dangling around my head. And I'm thinking to myself, how the heck is it two legs around my head? And then I heard somebody say, I'm sitting on his head, y'all. This fool done dunked on me, right? Because I was under the goal. And Sammy and I just became tight. He became one of my mentors. And as the years wore on, a certain darkness began to overtake my homie Sammy. And I actually fought to get my life sentence reversed on appeal. And no matter how hard Sammy fought, he was never able to give the life sentence back. And I recall switching out of the cell one day. And then someone said to me, somebody committed suicide up on, one of the tiers higher. Now, you all might not understand this, but when you do as much time as me and Mayan and others up here have done, suicide becomes normalized. People are going to commit suicide in prison. And so I said, dang, that's messed up. They probably gonna delay switch out, because we had to switch out to work. And then somebody else came through and said it was the homie Sammy. I didn't want to believe that. There's no way, we had just connected the night before. He didn't say nothing to me about this. And I know he would have. I said, there's no way. And if somebody else who I trusted came down and said the same thing, and I probably shot up 5 steps at a time. And there's something that we call the yellow board of death. And so I looked and I saw that they had the yellow board of death on Sammy's cell. And I touched it. And it was real. Sammy made a determination as a juvenile lifer that he wasn't going to be incarcerated past a certain age. Sammy was about 25 at this time. and Sammy made a decision that he was going to end it. Now, I can't sit here and say that I can't understand what would go through his mind to make him make that decision, because I did it too. I just lived. I woke up somehow, but by no grace of my own. I tried to end it. I wouldn't be here right now, y'all. So when they say 36 times more likely, I understand why. We are band of brothers inside of there. We all we had, and we supported each other. This practice of taking juveniles and putting them in solitary confinement and stripping everything out of the cell is so dehumanizing. It's literally designed to break you. Before you even understand your own humanity, it's designed to break your humanity. Now, I've seen so many adults break, but the idea and the notion of breaking juveniles like this, and we call ourselves humane. This is supposedly, one of the most advanced nations on earth. It needs to end. How does it benefit anyone? So they look at Mayan and they look at me, and I'm gonna end with this. And they say, you all are well adjusted. They have no clue the struggles that he and I and others have gone through and continue to go through to this day. They have no clue. And I'll tell you something. If it wasn't for the men in there mentoring us, you probably wouldn't see us. We probably wouldn't be here. Probably would have succeeded one of them times. I'm gonna wrap with this. I have recommendations to the UN. The UN should issue a position statement calling for a commitment of all nations to ban solitary confinement for minors and condemning such practices as torture. The UN Committee on the Rights of the Child has already stated such. I also call upon the UN Security Council to add solitary confinement as the 7th grade violation of children and to express a commitment to ending the practice. The other 6 grave violations that is a part of that is killing and maiming of children, recruitment or use of children as soldiers, sexual violence against children, abduction of children, attacks against schools or hospitals, denial of humanitarian access for children. And I would like the UN Security Council, because it has teeth, and the US is part and parcel of the UN Security Council, to adopt this as the 7th grave violation of children, and to actively work to end this type of a practice as psychological torture against juveniles and youth.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Marvina Haynes. I'm the founder of Minnesota Wrongfully Convicted Judicial Reform. I'm here today speaking on behalf of myself and my brother, who is Marvin Haynes, who has been wrongfully incarcerated and is still incarcerated at this time in Stillwater Prison. Marvin wrote, our story is that Minneapolis police stole my brother away from my family in 2004 for a crime that evidence showed that he didn't commit. Marvin, because he was a juvenile in 2004, he spent all of his trial period in solitary confinement, as the rest of my brothers and sisters were talking about. It was hard for him because with him being only 16, not knowing what's going on, not being able to speak to our mother for a course of 2 days. When they first picked Marvin up on the juvenile ward, they did take him into the juvenile detention center, but they wouldn't let my mom have any rights to him. And so when we finally found out that he was being certified as an adult, the news and the raid and the police and everybody showed up to our house. We had community members out there, and they were all protesting that Marvin should be certified as an adult. That was very hard for us. We didn't understand what was going on, and still to this day, Marvin, because he has spent so much time in there, he still thinks that the system is going to read his story and do the right thing, and they have not done that yet. Marvin experienced with solitary confinement. He said, I was sent to solitary confinement multiple times as a juvenile for lengthy amount of confinement time. But my hardest experience in solitary confinements were me going to trial, falsely accused, facing a life sentence from solitary confinement. While being mistreated by correctional officers for no apparent reason, being told I will never see the light of day again. The few privileges that he had were that were available to receive were taken from him, all because he was being placed in solitary confinement. Okay. What was his impact as a child? How has it impacted you as an adult? Solitary confinement impacted me tremendously as a child, causing him, when I say me, I'm speaking for him because he can't speak for himself. That was him who called on the phone, but unfortunately, our family don't have like a lot of resources or money or anything, so he couldn't continue to stay on that phone call. So it's hard for us every day still because we continue to fight against this big system with very little money, very little resources. And so that's the reason why he couldn't talk out himself. Solitary confinement impacted him tremendously as a child, causing him strain, anxiety, anger, depression, and even suicidal thoughts. Now as an adult, his social skills are lacking from them experiences. He says that he is more standoffish and less confidence about himself. And he's more confined to himself. What do we think should be done about solitary confinement in Minnesota? Why is it important that policymakers act today? Solitary confinement should be restricted to anyone under the age of 18 years old. He has seen juveniles attempt suicide because they could not handle the solitary confinement. It is extremely important for us to act now because we could be saving a juvenile's life and helping to rehabilitate the youth and not causing them more problems mentally later down the line. So Marvin is asking for all of you guys to act now. Myself, with Minneapolis taking my brother, it separated my family, which took all of us through a lot of changes. And so when I experienced the jail system myself, some of the jails that I had went through, they didn't offer women holding cells. So they stuck me into this cell for 23 hours of the day. Some days we were not allowed to get out and make phone calls. They wouldn't even bring you things like pads, tissue, hygiene needs, stuff. I sat in that room so long to where the bricks on the wall started moving. I had to grab my eyes because they were like coming at me out of the walls. They give you books to read, but the words on the pages eventually started moving. And my mind just was telling me, even though I wasn't looking at a life sentence or anything like that, but it was like I started receiving all of these thoughts in my mind, like, how long can I stay here? What should I do? I might as well just like kill myself up in here because they're not paying me no attention.
Sorry, guys. Sorry. It's really hard for a child. Children are supposed to make mistakes. There's no reason why they should be put into a cell where they have no love, no one to talk to, no therapist come through, the guards walk past you. And as we're talking about screaming out, it's not that we're trying to be a problem or like get on anybody's nerves. We just want someone to listen to us. We don't understand. We can't have our parents there. We're like, hold on, at least if they can like break down the steps, help us walk through it. They don't do any of that. They stick you in the cell, and before you know it, the walls are coming out at you visually. The books on the words are moving. And so that's my situation. My brother, like I said, is still in Stillwater. His OID number is 218258. We are calling on solitary confinement to end for all juveniles and for Marvin Haynes to be free immediately. Thank you, guys.
Let's stand up, stretch out. Let's give ourselves like a couple of minutes, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna listen to other speakers who are coming up here, right? And I'll introduce them in a minute, but stand up, stretch out, some breathing, all right? Despite all her trauma, right? Begin to look out for so many lives, families that have been affected, right? So she is the founder of Family Supporting Families Against Police Brutality, right? Toshira's group, the organization she started is primed to care for communities that have been affected by police brutality, right? She reaches out, she talks to people, she brings communities together at least once a week, right? And they regularly meet so that no one is left out to mourn for the death and the experiences that they are individually experiencing. Now there's a collective community, a village to support. That is what Toshira does. And she is a ultimate activist, right? And the best person to ever say the words of what is that? Right? When you end, we will end it with that term, right? Yes. Asada Shakol's chant. So you want to come back? Come up.
Thank you.
Y'all give it up.
Hi again, everyone. Am I good now? All right. Again, my name is Security Bureau Lady, member of the organization called Family Supporting Families of Police Island. But first and foremost, I am here to represent not only the families that lost loved ones, but the years of lost persons. A little bit louder?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm not only here to represent families that have lost loved ones at the hands of law enforcement, but I'm here representing the father of my son, Justin Tigan, who I feel was the epitome of a cover-up here in the state of Minnesota. Our group that is fighting together for justice, it's not about an organization for us or for me. It's about the fact that we figured out, just like my brother Eli said, that when he was in prison, that we all we got.
Yes.
Amen. We figured out that we're fighting up against a system that has been strategically designed and created and critiqued against people that look like me. It's designed this way. It's designed to work exactly how it's working. And after they mass incarcerate our people, then they do something called modern day lynchings in the street.
And that is what our loved ones have experienced. That is what we have experienced. Because after they murder our loved ones, we have to live what they've done. We have to live and try to speak up for our loved ones' humanity after they dehumanize them in the media, destroy who they were as a person, their character. Because the main point is to say, oh, we didn't need them in society anyway. He was a criminal. He had this and that on his record. The father of my son, Justin Titan, was pulled over by the St. Paul police August 19, 2009. They arrived at his grandmother's home and lied to us about where the incident actually occurred. We went to look for him and he wasn't there. They never told us he was pulled over. They said he was in an accident and missing from the scene of the accident when they got there. After they said he was missing from the scene, we went look for him. They said it was over off of St. Anthony and St. Paul. He was over in the Midway. They answered Justin's phone the night that he came up missing. The St. Paul police did. A Black officer, Raymar Davis, came to his grandmother's house and said that it's officers that are afraid for Justin, I'm afraid for his safety. If you know where he is, tell him to turn himself in. 7 days prior to Justin ending up dead in a dumpster, beat to death, they pulled him over, beat him up. During this time, the St. Paul Police Department gang task unit had got dismantled for illegally taking minority people's cars, jewelry, money. And the week before that, they had told Justin, we're going to take your car. He drove a nice car with rims on it. We're going to take your car and you're going to watch us drive it around. They beat him up that day. They took him to jail and they took his car. I went and got his car out the impound lot, hired an attorney and got him out. 7 days later, Justin was pulled over by the St. Paul police and ended up dead in a dumpster. Brutalized. Dog bites on his body. His wrist was detached from his arm. His skull was cracked in half. And I won't go into any more details because I don't want to traumatize our families even further. But he was lynched. My son's father was lynched in this place. They followed me. They sat outside my house. The St. Paul police. They would wave at me. When I first started organizing the families and speaking about his story, Joshua Lego came up to me, one of the officers that signed off on everybody's story. The forensic pathologist that works with, that's in George Floyd's case. They were originally going to cover up George Floyd's murder. Dr. Lindsay Thomas, she's the one that signed off on what happened to Justin. She told them that she needed a copy of the video to conclude this cause of death because they had to make all the stories go together. The video that they have is edited. We watched his mom, myself, we watched the videos go blank when they catch him on the video because he did run from them on foot. And they one officer chased behind him on foot and 2 squad cars. That's exactly what the witnesses saw, and that's exactly what I see on video before the video goes blank. So after they did that, we couldn't even have his funeral in peace because they were swarming around the church while we were trying to have his funeral. My son couldn't even recognize his dad in the casket. He said, "Mommy, that's not Daddy. This is the reality that we live through. This is my life. This is not a game for me. I don't stand out there because this is what I want to do. It's because I don't have a choice. I don't have a choice. And if it was me, he would tell my story. He would fight for me if it was me. So when they murdered George Floyd, I seen it like God cracked the door open for the rest of us who have been living with this. And all we had to do was push. So that's what we've been doing together. I've seen Miss Kim Hetty Jones go to banquet and invite families. Doesn't leave that thing alone. Right. I go straight to the. Yeah, I did not hear. But when George Floyd got killed, we started organizing, we started going out from protest to protest to protest to tell our stories. And getting our voices out because it's important that every last life. I'm not talking about supporting this family, but not this family. I'm talking about every single life that has been stolen at the hands of this corrupted system. Whether it's through the jails, the prisons, or the lynchings on the street, the blood that have been shed is equally, listen to me, equally important. I do not care about what they say when they say high profile and low profile. All of these people meant something to somebody. And all of these people had families that loved them. Right. These are families, and this ain't even half of the families that we have. Here in the state of Minnesota, there have been almost 500 bodies that have been lynched at the hands of law enforcement since the year 2000. I'm not even counting the ones that happened before the year 2000. Emmett Till family is here with us today. This is Minnesota. This is the name. That list that you see that she's holding up right now is the list of names since the year 2000 that have been stolen at the hands of law enforcement. These murders have been swept under the rug, kept quiet. And when we try to speak out, our families are harassed. I get death threats all the time. Our families are followed and all kinds of stuff happens. So we are here today to tell what Ms. Valerie always says, our reality. These are our realities. These are our stories. This is what we live. So with that, I thank you all for taking the time, having the heart to hear from our families. The first mother that I would call forward is the mother of Philando Castile, Valerie Castile.
I didn't know who was coming up here. I thought he was
We're gonna sit here.
If you guys
This time I wrote some things down because I didn't want to leave some important stuff that's been weighing on my heart as well pertaining to my son, Philando. My name is Valerie Castile. I'm the mother of Philando Castile. The worst day of my life was July the 6th, 2016, when my one and only son was gruesomely and horrendously murdered in Falcon Heights by a peace officer. Shot 5 times as he reached for his wallet as directed, while still seatbelted in his vehicle with a woman and a child. No regards to human life. A public display of lynching via Facebook. My son's last words were, "I wasn't reaching." A dying declaration. Philando was a great guy and was devoted to his job, a pillar in the community. He was stopped because of his tail light was supposed to be being out, or he fit the description,
or because of his wife said no. You picked the excuse. He had been pulled over by officers over 50 plus documented times prior. We had just returned from the 4th of July family reunion in St. Louis. After returning, Philando came over on the 6th to borrow the car to go get his hair redone because his birthday was coming up July 16th. He would have been 33 years old. Instead, later that evening, he was denied his right to live. I am now a mother of a group of Black mothers from across the nation that continue to lose their children to a war against Black children in our streets. I get regular phone calls from grieving mothers who have lost their children by the hands of police officers, or simply because when our Black children go missing, their lives do not seem to be worthy of an investigation. They reach out to me looking for a way to cope with their pain and feeling and hopelessness that keeps us up at night and drives us into deep states of depression and anxiety. We are Black mothers whose heart drops every time our children leave the house, hoping they return to us at the end of the day. For the Black mothers like myself, whose children do not return home, you can never understand the depths of our pain, because it goes beyond the recesses of our souls and we carry it with us like a cloak. Despite our own grief, I have seen how my son's passing has encouraged others to become agents of change. And I too continue to embrace that challenge. In addition to advocating for police reform, transparency, justice, and accountability, I would like for us to show up for Black mothers and families that are grieving by providing culturally relevant mental health support and resources to us, those that are our nation before. I'm not disrespecting any of the decent law enforcement officers who take seriously their oath to serve and protect their fellow citizens and uphold the Constitution to maintain peace. My concerns rest with the cops who feel empowered to access judge, jury, and executioner. These death squads believe they can kill, shoot, tase, abuse, and steal from American citizens in the so-called name of law and order. To this day, the Obama administration sent a team from the Department of Justice to get testimony just like you guys are here today on the very subject. They quietly, internally, and strategically shut it down. We deserve to have a complete, honest, accurate, open result from that investigation. I feel like right now my human rights and constitutional rights are being violated. All of us. Yes. This country, it prides itself on democracy, but it looks more like hypocrisy. Yes. We deserve to be taken serious. I pray you guys take us as serious as you take your job and as serious as we are about the murder of our children. There has always been a silent war on Black people, but it ain't silent no more.
Okay, we'll go on a roll like this. So I'll pick one each for that. We will now call forward the mother of Jafford Smith, who was killed by St. Paul Police Department. Matilda Smith. Matilda, yes, you want to stay there or you want to come up? I want to stay there. Okay, go ahead.
Everyone. My name is Matilda Smith, and I'm the proud mother of Jafford Smith, taken by St. Paul Police. Jafford Smith did everything to me. He was my baby. And he had a bad life. School. Yes. School to fight by the police.
My son was harassed by the police ever since he was 6 years old. I watched him follow my son home from school. My son had 3 different mental conditions. When the night they killed him, he was having a mental issue. They target the mentally ill, just like they target people of color. He's been targeted all of his life. And when he got home, just to have a good life, he played baseball. At 14 years old, he was playing baseball with grown men, and he played real well. Every time he tried to have a good life, they would target him. I listened to you speak. And everything that you say is so true because it happened to my son. Every time. And every time he come home, I'd be so scared that his mental health would be worse, but he was the most jolliest and happiest person. That's what he showed us, me and his other 2 siblings. He did not want us to know the pain that he had suffered. One night we got him together. We just wanted to know what happened to him. And we got him in one room of the house. And we tried to talk to him about it. And when he tried to talk about it, he would burst out and cry. And he couldn't say. Many times he come home with busted, he had scars all over his head, where it hit him in his head. Jafford went through everything. Lord St. Paul police, after all of that, Lord St. Paul police took his life. Their names were John Cochran, Mark Grindhouse, Jeff Clores, and Michael Teixeira. They all stood behind a resident that they had ran him behind on 787 Buffalo Street, St. Paul. They shot my son, couldn't stop shooting. And when they stopped shooting, one of them went and got a shotgun and emptied it in his backside while he lay on his stomach. I spoke with just about everybody. This destroyed me. My baby. This is the most painful pain that anyone can go through. I've spoken with governors, representatives, the state. Attorney General testified to me. I've rallied and protested and did a lot of interviews talking about Jafford. In December of 2020, Jafford's wife took her life because she could not live without it. And she couldn't keep thinking about what happened to him. She kept asking me, Mom, but I don't love Jafford. I don't know. If somebody won't like him, but you'll never find another Jafford. She cried every day. She called the police department. She went through her mental states. She would call the police department to talk to the chief and ask them why did they kill her husband. They wouldn't put the chief on the phone. She kept calling them. I told her to stop. I said, I don't want to talk to them. I don't want to talk to people that took my baby's life.
I said, you need to stop talking to them too. She wouldn't, she kept calling them. So one day in her office, she called them and they kicked her door down. And they manhandled her like she was a man. And they took her to jail. And they harassed her and harassed her. After Jaffer died, they would be parked at a house with that big light on shining through our house, just parked there. They harassed me in my apartment building. This here destroyed my family. Jaffer's sister and brother couldn't speak after this. I couldn't breathe after this. And I still don't breathe. It's been very hard, my health. My health got bad after this. You've seen how many times they shot him and how they left his pants pulled down for about 19 hours so everybody could view his body. Even on Facebook, he was on Facebook laying there with his pants pulled down to his foot. I felt not only was they targeting my son, but they were targeting me too and his family too. It's the most painful thing a mother and siblings and two families on both sides to go through. And we will never, ever be the same again. We will never come back to normalcy. No one knows just what we went through. People say, I know how you feel. They could never know this feeling here. It's the worst feeling that you could ever have. And I stand here today for all of the families that's been through this, all the present families that's been through this. No one deserved to be lynched and to be done the way they were done. It's all related, all of it. Mm-hmm. And I come here to plead with you, to do something about this. Please. This has caused mental illness after mental illness. All it does is make more mental illness. Children go through mental illness. Jaffer had a grandchild coming in the world while he was going out the world. Jaffer had a son that lost his mind after this happened. After this happened, his sister and brother stopped speaking. It was so hard on them to keep doing their jobs that they are doing. Just thank you. Just thank you for hearing us and listening to us. I'm not going to go into too much today because it's too traumatizing. I haven't been out to speak in a while because it's too traumatizing. It has affected my nerves. It has affected my health. And sometimes I have to stay away because I almost died, literally. I almost died and I was diagnosed with kidney cancer. I went to another doctor for a second opinion, and he examined me and told me what was happening with you now is the stress that you're under He said, your daughter told me everything that had happened to you. And I've never seen anybody do this, but I seen one, and they were under a tremendous amount of stress. He told me though, that I checked you from head to toe, and you don't have cancer. At that time, I didn't care if I did. I was so ready to leave this world myself. Because there's pain. You don't know how to get out of it. You don't know where to go from this pain. Thank you all for hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Ann. We will now move forward to the mother of Kobe Heisler, who was murdered by the Brooklyn Center Police. The same officer, Kim Potter, who was in Dante Wright's murder, is also involved in Kobe Heisler's murder. We will have his mother and his again. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Amity Dimmick, the mother of Kobe Heisler, legal name Kobe Dimmick Heisler. I'm also here to speak for Katie Wright, Dante Wright's mom. She is now my partner in crime. Workplace reform, however you look at it. Usually I do pretty well at speaking, but I call it these. On August 27th of 2019, I was sitting at a board meeting for Northern Pines Mental Health up north. Talking about how I felt that the companies were like trigger happy, but they're so afraid to do their jobs. They don't know what they're going to lock into these days. And one of the reasons is because many of the times we're sending them to deal with mental health issues, of which they are not trained. Right. They are not trained. They handle these calls. And this is not to say that what they do, they do what they do, just don't respond to these calls. 54% of the people that are harmed by the police are people with mental health issues, regardless of what color you are. On August 27th, I said out loud that my greatest fear as a parent of a child who was autistic was that I would get a call saying that the police had murdered my son. And I got that damn call 4 days later, you guys, 4 freaking days later. And you want to know why I said it out loud? It's because we know that police interacting with people with mental health issues is not the right thing to do, and that we know this. We have the stats, we have the facts to prove that they aren't the ones who should be responding. Yeah. But yet, when my very elderly father-in-law, my son had a bad day on August 31st, freaking Wendy's messed up his order. He knew they would. They messed up his order. Grandpa didn't want to wait to make sure they messed up their order. They drove off. Of course, they messed up the order. They got into a fight. My son jumped out of the car. Grandpa went home. When my son got to the house, he was upset. He grabbed a hammer and a knife and yelled at my father-in-law to fucking apologize. My son was a self-harmer. The police knew this. The shooting officers knew this. They had just responded 5 months prior to my son stabbing himself in the stomach. They knew he was a self-harmer. They knew he had autism. That day, the call came, but my son calmed down right away. So they called back and they said, everything's okay. The 911 called back again. Once again, grandfather reiterated, everything's okay. He's going to be okay. Not we're going to be okay. He's going to be okay. My grandson's going to be okay. Police showed up anyhow. And I don't know if you know this, but when there's a weapon mentioned, police who aren't even on duty show up to be a part of the action. So not only did a bunch of officers on duty show up for my 21-year-old autistic child, but other officers, a whole host of officers showed up. When they showed up, everything was fine, just like they said. Everything was fine. One of the officers said, "But we gotta go in and make sure everything's fine." Well, how long does it take to figure out everything is fine? Everything was fine. They pushed through. 2 of the officers go in the house. 2 of the officers outside. The grandfather is telling them over and over that my son is autistic, that everything is fine, that he didn't have his medication currently because of freaking COVID, and there was something with the forms and stuff, so he didn't have his medication. They knew all of this. 12 minutes of my son sitting there, not under arrest, not having done anything wrong, and completely compliant. Do you understand? I wouldn't sit there for 12 minutes calmly, because you would have no right to hold me in my own freaking house for no reason. After 12 minutes, he got up to leave. He got up to run to the front door. Tased him multiple times with tasers that don't even, in proximity, that don't even work. They very quietly, right after my son changed all their tasers, by the way, and upgraded to tasers that may have worked in that situation. And then he got up to then run to the back door, and keep in mind the houses in Brooklyn Center are all the same. The officers know the layout of this house. They knew there was a back door where he was running. And they shot him. They shot him 6 freaking times, including in the head when he was on the ground and he was just trying to leave. And then Hennepin County District Attorney Mike Freeman, who, by the way, during Kobe's case, was taken off the George Floyd case, deemed by his own colleagues to be too sloppy to handle the task. Well, why is Kobe's case, Brian Quinones' case, Travis Jordan case, all the other cases that were with him at the same time, why was he not determined to be too sloppy to handle my case? Why did I have to accept his outcome? My son's officers didn't get charged. They killed my baby and then nothing. Nothing happened. Nothing that I haven't been out here doing this, trying to force it, trying to force change. Me with a lot of the people here helped get Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, where they also murdered Dante Wright, to pass the Dante Wright and Kobe Dimmick Heisler Community Safety and Crime Prevention Resolution. They put myself as chair of the expanded alternative response program that they're gonna have, and they put Katie Wright as chair of the traffic stop policy. What ended up happening when that got passed in May of 2021 was they activated and they organized, and they got the mayor who helped us get it passed, voted out of office. They got 2 new city council members who don't support the resolution. And then they stonewalled us every step of the way to make it so we got to the new election system. So now we're trying to implement this program with a mayor who kind of supports it and 2 new city council members who don't. That's where we're at. But everything that we have done to try to make a change has been forced. Everything that I've done to try to get something for my son, because they don't get to steal my child and then nothing. He didn't do anything wrong. He crocheted, he needle pointed. He didn't even have the mentality of a 21-year-old. They saw him, he's a large boy, and he was mentally unstable. And somehow they equated that. I'm probably not even supposed to say this, and I don't even really care, because they say when you have a case, you're not supposed to say stuff, because maybe it could be used against me somehow, but I don't give a F. One of the officers that murdered my son, 5 seconds before he went in and murdered my son, and this was the man who had responded to his self-harm stabbing. He looked at the grandfather and he said, "You don't understand, sir. The writing's already on the wall. The next time we come to this house, it will happen because your son has murdered you or the grandmother. How in the hell do you get to decide that that would happen with a child who has never hurt anybody in his life but himself?" I really need the UN to put pressure on the United States. I was trying to figure out what ask we could get that the United Nations, because we also had a meeting last night about, we do this, we meet with people, we meet with the DOJ, we meet with these people and nothing happens. Like, we come and we do this to ourselves over and over and nothing happens. But what do I think? Maybe you might be able, if the one ask, maybe qualified immunity needs to be gone where it has been in place. Those cases need a re-look at. Qualified immunity is not fair. Any of us, and I'm an accountant, there's doctors, all these different people, we're responsible when we mess up at work. How did the police convince us that they are beyond reproach? How did it get to the point where we have so many people that blindly bootlick?
No, they were up front.
How did we get to this point? We need to reverse it. One of the ways that really completely 100% stifles all families is this thing called qualified immunity. I can't go into that because I'm already beyond my time, but qualified immunity, that's what we need help with. There's one thing I personally ask of you guys, is to make that a non-reality, because it gives us no chance whatsoever. Justice for Kobe and justice for Dante and justice for all stolen life.
Hamilton. We're running a little short on time and the experts have to leave soon. So I want to make sure that at least each of our families, it is always important that each and every one of our families that are present get to at least speak of their loved one. So we will move forward with the mother of Tekle Sundberg, who was murdered about 6 or 7 months ago by the Minneapolis Police Department. Cindy Sundberg, thank you.
Her son Tekle was born in Ethiopia. He was independent, he was strong, he loved his family, and he's deeply loved by us. He was searching and growing and learning. The police called us at midnight on July 13th, 2022, telling us our son was involved in an incident and was holed up inside his apartment. We raced to the apartment. They held us in a fenced-in parking lot back behind the building. We could not see our son, but we could hear the bullhorn blasting at him. I begged them not to shoot him. They told us over and over again that they don't kill people. They wouldn't even let Tekle's dad talk to him. I told them that he had PTSD and other mental health disabilities, but they didn't care. Bystander video showed Tekle was in the window, obviously in a mental health crisis, holding his phone and playing music. The building was evacuated. The police were in military gear and back far away from his window. They did nothing to de-escalate the situation. Their only plan was killing him. As the night moved on, they told us that Tekle wasn't responding, so they were going to shoot his windows out to get his attention. They fired 17 times with non-lethal bullets. He had to be terrified.
And then there were 2 more shots, different shots. I asked what they were, no one answered. We heard an ambulance. I kept asking them what happened. No one told us anything. I finally found a person who responded, get to the hospital as fast as you can. So we raced to HCMC and we weren't allowed to see him. The doctor came out. She said he was dead. We still couldn't see him. Because of 2 snipers who did not see our son's humanity in a police force that escalated instead of de-escalating our son's mental health crisis, we're left grieving and empty. Our family is shattered. Our hearts are filled with sadness, loss, and despair. Techley will never live the life he deserved to live. The disparity in police response for people of color and white people is glaring, documented, deadly, and in Minnesota, ignored. At the time of our son's killing, a white man was shooting at people and he was arrested alive.
Yes.
A couple months ago, a white man shot at police 3 times, went into his apartment, and they used tear gas to arrest him alive.
Yes.
White people are arrested alive and people of color die. And it will continue because they're allowed to do it here. We need outside help. We need someone to make this horror stop.
Thank you, Steve.
Good morning. Techley's dad. Can you tell me again the cities that you're going to?
We've already been to Atlanta, LA, just off Chicago, and here we go to New York City.
Atlanta, LA, Chicago, New York, and Minnesota,
Washington.
and Washington, DC. Not Baltimore, not Dallas. We're a small town compared to those people. And we got on this tour, and that's ridiculous. We're supposed to be known for 3M or pristine lakes and gold medal flour. But that's not what we're known for anymore. We're known for cops that kill people of color. And this is ridiculous. It's got to change. And I'm calling out to all the white people. I know I'm preaching to the choir in this building, but if there's white people out there watching, you got to get on this. This is important. This is it will affect you if you don't think it won't. So please see the injustice.
Thank you, Mike. Unfortunately, families, our time did get cut. So we don't have as much time, but we have about 15 minutes. So please, because I have I have Amir Locke's mother, I have the family of Emmett Till, I have Delon E's father, and I have George Floyd's significant other. And also, so I have about 5 families. I will be honest, the fact that our time got cut, I'm not happy about that because our families deserve to be able to share, especially if you're going to see politicians. It's not like they're going to tell you the truth. Okay, I was told it to 12:15, so I want to make sure that our families get the time that they need and most of all the Thank you. With that, anything. With that, I will call forward, but families, please do understand that we only have 31 minutes and we got 5 families that need to speak. So we will now have the mother of Amir Locke, who was laying sleeping innocently. He grabbed his firearm because he was being haunted in his sleep, and he was murdered.
but he never posed a threat to police. I call forward Karen Wells, the mother of Amir Locke. Thank you.
Oh, everybody hear me? My name is Karen Wells. I am the mother of Amir Locke. Amir Locke was executed by the Minneapolis Police Department in 2022. Amir Locke was becoming 22. His birthday was November 11th. He was only 22 for less than 3 months. My son was sleeping on his cousin's couch when they chose to go in and do a no-knock warrant for search of property, not a body. A search warrant, no knock, for property, not a person. Amir was a victim of this senseless no-knock warrant. He was not on the warrant, nor was anybody else that was in that household. My son was innocent, and my son should still be here. It is not fair for me to get a fatal call at my job while I was living in Dallas, Texas, which we both were living there. He was back here where he was born and raised, visiting his family. Temporarily. He was supposed to be coming back to come back and be with me. So imagine, and you are probably wondering, why is there an empty chair right here? Because that's where Amir should be sitting. When I eat at the dinner table now, there's an empty chair. All of the families now have an empty chair. I should not be here. Do you know what it's like to get a phone call when you're at work from the father of my child, Andre Locke Sr., telling me, Karen, where are you? I'm at work. I was just told that Amir was killed by the police. Once a phone call like that, I screamed. I fell down. My coworkers had to pick me up. They cried with me because all I ever talked about was my son and my granddaughter, who is his only niece, who is now affected by what the police officers did to my son. Do you know what it's like when you walk into a police precinct and they lie in your face and they look at you and be like, I'm sorry, give me condolences, but not realizing that you lied on my son to the media.
Yes.
You lied. Amir was a bright light. Can you imagine going and sitting in a room with a police officer and looking at that tainted video that they put out of my son on a couch? And as his mother, I ran out. But as his father, he sat still. He watched the video, but to this day I have not. Because I can't. Because on 2/2/22, they forever changed who Karen Wells is.
Yes.
I can no longer go back to who I was on 2/1/22. I can't. But I've always been there for my son. And on that fatal day, I couldn't protect my baby. I have two sons, Andre Locke Jr. and Amir Locke. Amir was my baby. My baby had goals. He started an LLC that I helped him pay for, called Saving the Youth. At 22 years old, my son talked about real estate, generational wealth. He was fascinated with music. He got it from his father, hip hop artist. And he wanted to start his own business and clothing line. He even designed a shoe. And his dreams and goals were cut short. And that's not fair. Amir was asleep. I believe that to this day, me and his father don't believe that he knows who actually executed him. He was not awake. That my son was startled, awakened. All they had to do was get a just go get a warrant where you can just go and knock on the door. Knock on the door. Don't come up in my baby where he's laying his head at in the wee hours of the morning when my baby was a deep sleeper. And then you have the nerve for these police officers in the Twin Cities and across the United States to run around and talk about they got PTSD.
Yes.
Well, I got LWABH, living with a broken heart. When they executed my baby on 2/2/22, they killed me too. I walk around here. Nobody knows. Any mothers out here that know what's going on in the United States, anybody that's a mother in this room, do you know what it's like to have to call the life insurance company and tell them that you calling on behalf of your 22-year-old baby instead of Amir supposed to be calling 30 years later about me? They broke down when I told them. Some of them already knew and heard about my son when I was talking to them on the phone. It's not right. It's not fair. Amir should be here, but because he can't, I will. I'm not going anywhere. I said it from day one. When you took my son, you messed with the wrong mother. I'm not playing around about mine. I never played around with him, and I'm not playing about my son anymore. You guys have thrown me, all these families up here. We are now a family. We are now a unity. They say powers are in numbers. Am I correct? Yes. So that means you're making us more powerful when you mess with ours. We're not going to keep sitting around here. I'm not asking you to do nothing. I'm going to tell you what you're going to do. That's what you're going to do. They're going to stop killing our kids. They're going to start treating them like the human beings that they are. It doesn't matter what color that hand was. Because like they already said, when you got the privilege, you can walk away without a gunshot. But not my son. Not my son. They didn't even have the decency to wake my baby up and ask him what his name was. But you want to ask after you done killed my son. Then you want to ask what his name was. No, you should have asked what his name was when you went up in there with that old botched up no-knock warrant. That should have never took place anyway. This is my niece right here. She was raised with Amir. That is like her baby brother. She stayed with me. And when you talk about PTSD, it's not a joke. We are all suffering from this. It is unbelievable. And she's been there. That's why she's here with me right now. She couldn't even go to his funeral. She couldn't even show up at the funeral. So this is what we need, America. We need everybody here. We need you guys to understand what is going on in the family dynamics. My 6-year-old granddaughter is having issues now because she knows what they did to her uncle. She doesn't like the police. She doesn't trust the police. I'm sorry. I mean, you know, they always want to say, well, there's good cops as well, but there's also good Black boys, good Black men. So we shouldn't have to sit here and justify that. I am not pro-police. I am not anti-police. But what I am is pro-Amir Locke. I'm his mother. And now I'm going to do share my little time with my niece so she can speak. Because at the end of the day, nobody wants to have death by homicide on their baby's death certificate.
That's right.
This is my first card showing.
Take your time, please. Take your time.
This is my first time. Going up to an event, since Amir has been murdered, you know, that has to do with Amir being sober. We shouldn't be here. Not for this. We should be giving Amir an award, you know, honoring him while he's right here next to us. The level of PTSD and pain that those officers have caused our families is unbearable. It is, and I'll just say to the families that are not here, regardless if you can come, sober or not, it's okay, just show up. Show up. It's gonna be hard. Eventually you'll get to that point where you can't be here and speak on our loved ones we have, because it's important. We're the voice. And I'll forever show up for my cousin. I'll forever show up for my aunt. Like she said, that was my baby brother. I was locked out the house for 20 minutes. He came downstairs. Oh, my bad, cousin, I was asleep. 20 minutes. He's a deep sleeper. So again, we'll always show up from here.
Okay. We have 15. They said it was a 12:30.
So how many demonstrators?
I have, Emmett Till's family. I have the significant other of George Floyd. I have Howard Johnson's mother, and I have Delani's father, so I have 4.
We were just. Yeah, I'm staying here. Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, sir. Let's stay for a minute. Yeah. Go ahead.
You want to go up? All right. So now we're gonna have the cousin of Emmett Till, who has been out here standing up, because we know that these are modern day lynchings.
Yes.
We know that Emmett Till was lynched back in Mississippi.
Yes.
But you go down that Mississippi River and you end up here in Minnesota.
Wow.
And so these are modern day lynchings, as I said in the beginning, that have happened here in the state of Minnesota. We will now call forward Deborah Watts, the cousin of Emmett Till. Thank you.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity. We have so many. We've had them for 68 years. We put Emmett's body on display for the world to see. His mother at age 14, so brutalized that no one could recognize him. What an opportunity. Thank you, Mary. Emmett Till is my cousin. Our great grandfathers were brothers. And at age 14, as customary in most families, he was sent to Mississippi to visit them. But Emmett didn't make it back. That same opportunity. That opportunity was met with white supremacy, hatred, and all of those things that permeate through the DNA of the United States of America. So unfortunately, fortunately, I should say, I'm born in America, a country that I believe has committed some crimes on humanity, but have not been held accountable. But we have so many opportunities to share our stories, to share our pain, that we
we have created profit off of our pain, haven't we? Another opportunity. So in the context of where we are today, I just want to say that Emmett 14 was brutally murdered in 1955, not so very long ago. The white woman whose allegation that resulted in the torture and murder of my cousin was unpunished. The killing and the murder and the lynching outraged not only the United States, but the world. And that was because his mother put his body on display for the world to see. But how did the world respond? Another opportunity. For 47 years, she fought. She spoke. She joined other families. She used that opportunity and that platform so that we wouldn't be standing here today. Because what she knew is that we need to connect the past to the present and the future. Little did she know that her cousin, Deborah Watts, and her daughter, Terry Watts, would be still fighting the fight that she started in 1955, denied of liberty, denied of the chance for her son to live to be 82, which he would be on his birthday, July 25th. 1941 is when he was born. An opportunity missed. An opportunity that was missed by the United States of America when his case was reopened in 2003. An opportunity missed when his case was closed in 2007. An opportunity missed also when in 2008, President Bush signed a bill called the Emmett Till Unsolved Civil Rights Crimes Act. And that bill called for the investigation with the Department of Justice and the United States of America's FBI and others to look at cases. At that time, there were 126 cases, unsolved cases, documented cases. What an opportunity. Those cases, I'm just going to show you just a few of them. I didn't print the first couple pages, I don't know. But today we stand here, this is another opportunity where those cases have grown to 161. These are names of families that stand here just like me, who have received an opportunity from the federal government, a letter that says to them, I'm so sorry. All the perpetrators are gone. Right. The laws that were in place, the statute of limitations have run out, and we can't do anymore. So on December 6th, 2021, the Department of Justice, FBI, and others closed the investigation of Emmett Till's case. That didn't stop Deborah Watts, Terry Watts, Keith Beauchamp, Melissa Ernest, Kali Rashid, because they said we need more evidence. We went to the basement of the LaFleur County Courthouse in Mississippi. So Mississippi, I get it mixed up sometimes because of the river, but because of the similarities. There's not much difference when you look at that list and when you look at what's happening today. So another opportunity, we went to the basement of the LaFleur County Courthouse, planning for 3 days to explore. We weren't researchers, no, we were families determined and intentionally looking for new evidence because for some reason, the United States of America would indict a person that lied and caused Emmett's death. She lied and Emmett died. So we found this evidence, which I brought with me today. We found an affidavit that says clearly that Carolyn Bryant Dunham, Roy Bryant, and K.W. Milam were found in the county, and they should be brought before the authorities for kidnapping.
In the affidavit, it says, I'm going to leave you all with this. In the name of the authority of the state of Mississippi, Minnesota, I, John Frazier, County Prosecuting Attorney in and for LaFleur County and in said state, be duly authorized to inform the court of offenses committed within the county and the state after having been first duly sworn, come now, and hereby inform the court that Roy Bryant, Mrs. Roy Bryant, and J.W. Milam in the county and state on the 29th day, just the day after Emmett was murdered. What did they did then and willfully, unlawfully, feloniously, and without lawful authority, forcibly seize. They define this. Seize and confine and kidnap Emmett Lewis Till, a human being, just as all these other families are human beings, with the willful, unlawful, felonious intent then and there to cause Emmett Lewis Till to be secretly confined or imprisoned against his will and against the peace and dignity of the state of Mississippi. What an opportunity. We found it. We gave it to the authorities. We gave it to the Department of Justice. We did countless interviews, which we will not conduct anymore, only on our platform. But we did countless interviews. We were not media princesses. None of these people are media princesses or mothers or trying to grab the attention. They're just trying to get justice for their loved ones.
Right.
But an opportunity missed because on April 27th, well, I should say this first. We filed an archaic rule, the writ amending this against the sheriff of LaFleur County, the current sheriff, and the DA, Dwayne Richardson. We filed a writ amending that said, do your job, serve this warrant. We filed that December 9th, 2022. We got word just a week ago that we would have a hearing June 22nd. Another opportunity came because on April 25th, Carolyn Bryant Dunn, the last living accomplice, died. So who do we hold responsible for these loved ones? The miscarriage of justice. I'm a citizen of the United States. I am not in contempt of any damn thing. I'm just wanting the system to work as it should work for anyone and how it's not worked for all of our families. But the death of Carolyn Bryant Dunn does not stop our pursuit of justice because we are working and advocating in Minnesota and across this country for victims of racially motivated murders. So our congressmen, women, senators, and others across this country and the UN, I invite you to join us on our task, and that is to help these families. You saw the tears, you saw the pain, you probably felt the pain. That's the lack of therapy. That's a lack of mental health support, which we now have a bill in Minnesota that's called the Emmett Lewis Till Victims Recovery Program. But we're looking at the United States of America and perhaps the UN, as you hear, these are global issues we're talking about. That some of our issues and some of our demands include a survivors fund. We did that for Holocaust victims. We did it for other victims. How come we can't have it for the victims of racially motivated murders? Right. Access to financial resources for families to hire independent legal and investigative support to pursue justice for their loved ones. We have to come out with a seat at the table when memorials and lasting legacies of our loved ones are being designed and built. Sometimes we're not there when people are profiting off of our pain and creating memorials without us. Resources to access effective marketing and PR, because we don't have that. We're trying to do our best with what we have. We use chairs, we use pictures, we use signs to try to get your attention. an apology. Could that even be conjured up from our local, state, federal, and the union? An opportunity. Identifying justice beyond the courtroom, which most of us are pursuing, our nation has responded to other acts of violence, and I think we have an opportunity to do it today. So let's look at legislation. Let's continue to advocate together. I stand with these families because from the past to the present and the future, we are connected and we're bonded by blood and our pain, our grief, and hopefully our power. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Debbie. We will now have the mother of Howard Johnson, who was just killed in December, right before Christmas. He was ran over and then shot by St. Paul police. His mother, Marie Johnson, thank you. Like she said, my name is Monique. I'm the mother of Howard Johnson. I was like the second to go in line, but this is getting fresh for me. Like I want to start off by saying that my son's body, even though I know his soul and his spirit is with God, is still laying on a motherfucking metal slab at the medical examiner's office 5 months later. They won't release his body until the investigation is over, and I don't think that that's fair. My son was ran over and then shot. And then I was invited to the police station to watch these edited videos of what happened to him. I don't know what to do with myself. A month after my son was killed, I went back to work. But I just recently put my 2 weeks in because I can't do it. God, this is so unfair. The police station, nobody's giving me nothing. Nobody's called me, nobody's said nothing. I don't know what's going on with the investigation. I don't know what the fuck is going on. And all I want to do is put my baby to rest. I'm sick of wondering. I want to see all of the videos. Like they talk about transparency, and I talk about this every time I get up on the podium, but they talk about transparency and they've given me nothing. And nothing, and they give me their narrative and expect me to fucking believe that shit. Excuse my language, but I'm pissed. I'm pissed. He was my second grandchild, and he was a beautiful soul. He's got 2 beautiful twin boys that they have to grow up without their daddy. And then not to mention, but all these other, like I stand in solidarity with all these other families. I'm truly grateful to have met all these people. I hate that it had to be under these circumstances. Like, I don't know what I would have done without them. Like, they've been my support. And what I want to say about the police, it's time that we start holding them accountable.
Yes.
UN, help us to start holding these people accountable. Like, they need to be held accountable. We have to be held accountable for our actions. They also need to be held accountable for their actions. Yes. Like, what's fair is fair.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And then on top of it, just give us, like, you give me nothing. Like, I'm just wondering and guessing, and you know what I'm saying? Like, I just want to know what happened to my son. Like, and I know there's other videos, and let me tell you something else that they did. That he was shot in front of a saloon. I don't know if they went in there and threatened the guy or what they did, but they went in there and the guy would not release the video to me. Or to anybody for that matter. Oh, and then we had a meeting with the mayor, and the mayor said that they are not allowed to do that, but guess what? They do what the fuck they want to do.
Yes.
So it's up to us to come together. And I also want to say the community, the people that are not here, like I've said before, it has not affected you, but it's possible that it will, especially if you're a person of color. So come out and support us. We need the help. We need to make a change. This is the generational curses that we are living with today. Like Emmett Till, he would have been 82. So 82 years we've been living with this stuff. It's time to make a change. We need to stand up for ourselves and do something. And we need to do it together. Unity is the key. So come on, people. And thank you to Shira, because she's the shit. Thank you. We will now call forward the significant other of George Floyd. When George, we've seen what happened to George Floyd. And this, Courtney, just watching her and seeing the love that she had for George, me understanding the love that I had for my son's father, and the way that she has fought tirelessly. She was in that courtroom when, they attacked her and everything, but on the last days when all the trial and everything was over, Courtney was in that courtroom. And she asked me to come down there with her to that courtroom.
He did.
And it's just, there's no words for this stuff here. But I will have Courtney Ross, the significant other of George Floyd. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. Microphone, here we go. I'm gonna keep it beyond brief because I know that Floyd, as I call him, has had much attention beyond Minnesota, beyond the world. And I want the time to be spent with my families over here because these are my friends and they are suffering and they need to be heard as well. But quickly, I just wanted to address everyone, the UN, EMLER, thank you for having this. It feels good to see my friends have a voice and to be heard by not only each other, but by a mass governing entity. I become accustomed to testimonies. So today I decided I'm going to speak and say what Floyd would say. And what I know he would say is that in his deep, southern, raspy accent, he would say, y'all gotta change this, man. Y'all gotta change this. And what he would mean by that is that we all have to start changing. All of us need to have a change within our heart, have some more love, have some more forgiveness for those around us. We have mastered the preschool to prison pipeline in Minnesota and the United States. And that's where my heart truly lies. I've been in education my whole life. I'm also a representative of Dante Wright. I was an educator of his. And that is where the big change needs to start. When you stop treating our little ones as if they're adults, we need to teach them the right way to go. And then we won't have to have these problems up here, right?
Right.
We can start with our young ones.
Yes.
So if you see a little one today, you give them a little extra love on behalf of George Floyd.
That's right.
Thank you for hearing me.
Go on record. We will now have our last speaker from the families, and it is the father of Delai. Delai was murdered by the Minneapolis Police Department. They rammed him in. After they got done killing Delai, they went to this man's home with his little children, left the door wide open. It was freezing cold because it was right before the New Year's in December. Ramshacked this man's house with his kids was terrorized, everything. So my brother Bailey, he has a little bit of an accent, but I'm gonna share it, but he thinks his
Oh, yes, he does.
I want to share as much as I can to let you guys know how they tormented this man's family
The BCA, they need to tell this man that his son was dead. They came and ransacked his home. The kids were screaming, pointed guns at 5 and 6 and 7-year-old kids. And didn't even tell this man that his son was dead. This is the Minneapolis Police Department. I'll call my brother David. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. I'm really sorry, my sister who was right here. You hear me? I'm really sorry for all of us. Not only you who have that pain, we have all. We have that pain, all of us. And I hope that pain will be in today. I hope. Okay, my name is David Gillett, and I'm a father of Doral Age. The picture is there.
Yeah.
He was with 23 years when he got killed. And it was December 80th. I don't remember the year, but it was 2021, I believe. Before that night before, we sit together in my house and we was eating a lunch together all the family and we have tea. And we was making a plan, me and him, we're gonna go into Africa, a motherland, and he's gonna get him married. But unfortunately, time's up. I know our family and members of our loved ones will never came back, but still they are our heart and our blood, and we will never stop until our last breath. We will never stop to fight to get the justice. They came, I called them, they was a terrorist group. They came to my home, it was midnight, and was sleeping as a peaceful. They killed my son around 8 p.m. in the gas station. They came to my home after, I believe it was 12 midnight. And we were just leaving all my kids and my wife, and me, they was going to the gun. And we don't know what happened. And we didn't have done anything wrong at all. When they came there, they was collect all of us, the same spot. And they continue was really cold. We are in Minnesota, and we know it was a winter time really cold, and it was in December of 30th. And at that time, it became of December of 31. And it was really cold. They opened a main door wide. I don't have a t-shirt. I don't have a band. I have what they call in Somali, Maus. And Maus, it means a good child to sleep in the night time. He was sitting there. Those group, the terrorist group, they don't have any safety award. I asked them, my children, they're asking them the question, who are you and what are you looking for? You know what? They was scared us. Really scared us. And they have a shield and big guns, and even they don't have a mask. It was a really scary time when we look back. But always the gun is great. They need to kill us. But we don't know what they looking for. They was to destroy my home. And they would take some a wire, and they little type of thing was to make us eat of us, all of us.
Oh.
And we don't know what they were looking for. And even my youngest son, who was 4 years at that time, he was sleeping in his bed, and he had, when he is disabled, he had Down syndrome. Cannot talk. When he heard that noise, he came upstairs after time. Two police officers, I don't know if you watch the video, they was wanting him for 4 years. Flashlight with a gun.
Wow.
Like this one, and everybody knows. I think in Google you can see a video. Although they was cut off of emotionally and they released. The only thing they was thinking they did not get in trouble. And for 4 years, who have down for some room, there was a born gun, and he was screaming and come back, and they was screaming a lot. By the way, I don't want to talk so much, and I don't want to become emotional. I came from Africa, far away with so many, without saying a mile from here. The reason I was choosing to be in the United States was to get peace and justice. It was a civil war in my motherland. When I came to the United States, I said to look at the fall. Where is the justice? And Minnesota governments, Minneapolis and Myers, and the system of this state, it's them who is killing our people. It's them who is denying our justice. It's them who is allowing the police to kill our people. We need to stand up and fight really to get our justice. My sister, she was talking about, it was started 82 years ago. No, I say that discrimination and killing our people, it was start the day when they was stolen us to bring it there. Yes. And I'm really sorry of George Floyd, when they was killed in front of the wall. In front of the wall. See, everybody. They was saying what? No, we need to kill him. You see how stupid the lie they are. And Minnesota and police, it is, I don't know who teach them, but there was a little graduate to a lie. Yeah, graduate to a lie. I don't know if you get me what I mean. They will learn to say a lie. And again repeat and lie until the people thought you are telling the truth, but they are lying. Yes. Can you imagine all of us? When you see and went into gas station, you see a police officer who was killing your son. Yeah, the name and Benjamin. And I know when he see me, he was stunned. Get ready with his guns. I don't know what he have. And looking me, cruel eyes, like this one. Cruel face. I don't know if you, the shit was telling me.
You had the cruel eyes.
When you look at people like this. Oh, you have any organization who is dealing with law and justice. They kill our people. And they continue and they will never stop it until they get the banishment. The banishment is, have you ever seen someone who would shoot the young father kid? Young father kid, they kill. And the mother, I think she's the mother. When they kill, our daughter died. She said, I thought I was using the taser gun. No, they think we are.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
They think we are idiots. We are not 400 years. We are chosen to be and we educate.
Right.
And we cannot accept any more lies.
Right.
You have, I don't know how they're going to help us because they have a big name, United Nation on the wall. And me, when I was scared, I take my children outside of the state, I take them somewhere I thought to get be a peace for my kids. Okay, the lawyer, I never will tell in the public, but I have to tell now. The lawyer I was behind this case. He told me to take your children and your family, you have to go back where you became from. That means happy. I said, there's no any legal, there's no any justice, it's only any. They're gonna get after you. Wow. And when somebody told you who you pay him money, told you they're gonna get after you and they're gonna kill you for your children. You gotta be is getting you too. I thought I would take my children and find a way to take them out. Or somewhere on Tashiro knowledge. And then when I came back, and he told me you cannot say any bad words or to a body. And I said, why? I don't have the gun, I don't have the power, I don't have anything. My power is peace. I have to open my mouth bigger and say whatever I feel. When I refuse, he told me don't go earlier or demonstration. When he told me don't go rally or demonstration with the black people, he told me that I said, I'm not white. I lost my son. I have to go. I for justice. He told me he would drop the case. So I asked him, okay, give me my money.
Yeah.
He would refuse to be. He told him I'm not giving you nothing. I didn't do any work. You see?
Yes.
That is, and he's a black man too.
Wow.
You see, he's a black man too. It's just the color, it don't help. So my last award is, there will be one day. There will be one day and everybody's gonna have a justice. And that is gonna be when everybody stands in front of Allah.
Amen. Amen.
Well, Allah has so many names called God.
Yes.
So we will never stop this revolution until we get what we wanted. And what we wanted is what?
Justice.
Peace and love.
So thank you all for being here, for hearing from our families this evening or today. The last thing is believe our family. You know, we're out here telling our stories and for so long they mastered the art of cover up. But these stories are true, they're our lived experience. And I will just leave you with injustice done to one of us is an injustice done to all of us. And we have to believe that in our heart, and we have to move and act as such. Move like this is your loved one. Move, be out there, support us. We're out there constantly. I know y'all see the flyers on Facebook. I know y'all see the flyers on Instagram. I know y'all see the inboxes. I go in individual inboxes, sending flyers. Please come out and support us, because it means the world when we see you guys, when we're out there, it lifts our hearts and our spirits up. And so believe and move and act as if you believe in your heart that that injustice that happened to Philando, that happened to Howard, that happened to Jeffrey, that happened to Kobe, that happened to Tekle, that happened to Amir, that happened to Emmett, that happened to Dela, that happened to Justin, that happened to Jamar, that happened to Travis Jordan, that happened to all of our loved ones. Move as if this is your loved one, because it could very well be. We have a duty to fight for our freedom. We have a duty to win. We must love and support one another. We have nothing to lose but our chains. We have a duty to fight for freedom. We have a duty to win. We must love and support one another. We have nothing to lose but our chains. 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 Power to the people. Thank you all for being here. The father of my son, Justin Tigan, at the governor's mansion at 5 p.m. But we will have all the other families there uplifting their loved one as well. So please show up 5 p.m. Governor's Mansion Thursday. Thank you. The page that you can check it out is Families Supporting Families Against Police Violence. We got Emmett Till's page, we got Philando's page, all the different pages, Black Lives Matter Minnesota. But Families Supporting Families Against Police Violence is the page where you'll find the event. Thank you. And I want to shout out Chantel Allen, because she's the first one I ever heard say that a speech, and she's shaking her head, but I got it. Thank you.
I'm not gonna share and shut that down for us, so thank you so much for that. I want to thank everyone that came here, that heard the young folks, and now all of our adults, right, speak about the trauma that we endured while in solitary confinement, and then staying longer to hear the family speak. The person who's gonna actually close us out is Alvin, and then please stay around because there is food downstairs, and I know, right? If you would like to interview any of the young folks who are in the first session, please come up to myself, and I will make sure you get connected to them. We need the story out there, right? So thank you so much, y'all.
All right, y'all. Hey, y'all, my name is Dr. Alvin Akbar. I'm the director of the Center for Social Justice here at Urban City. As we get started, I'm going to be mindful of local space. We're supposed to have access. We have those mental building needs. We're going to get the food building downstairs with community rooms. Straight back to the straight back to the lobby here and downstairs, or you can go down. You can down button inside the door down. Y'all, thank you for doing this today. If you something is cut to you, and what they even use that as motion to keep things act, call for accountability, and folks to make things and care about Black lives, because we need to make sure that we can actually get that. Thank you. Dr. Wrongful, go ahead.